Good evening, everybody. Thanks for making time on a Thursday evening to be with us. I think when Pankaj and Rajiv, were talking about this topic, which revolves around fundamentally three pillars, right, of leadership, which is culture, innovation, and growth. It was something interesting that we all discussed, right? We're talking about two organizations today. One is Hero FinCorp, right? Which is going through a digital transformation journey right now. They serve customers across tier one, tier two, but also serve a lot of customers, those who are in the rural part of India. Then we have a brand, Spinny, who is disrupting the automotive sector and probably addressing a $100 billion opportunity. But they operate in a traditional space. Now, when we thought about it, the one question that came to our mind is that for both of these organizations, is there something which is in common, right? Which is, say, a customer centricity, right? So, Rajiv and Neeraj, you can choose to pick, your questions. From a customer centricity perspective, with a focus on leadership, right? Can you give an example from your organization or your experience, where this customer centricity driven top down has led to a transformational growth in the company?
Right, thanks. Firstly, thank you everyone for your time and staying back for the final session. So, as you rightly said, we are going through the digital. Maybe I'll start with talking a bit about digital transformation, and then I'll just jump on if you're okay. So, a lot of the speakers before me spoke about this as well. That we are in the cusp, and there is this law called Moore's law. I don't know how many in the audience have heard about it, where the number of capacitors, ICs, in a chip is roughly doubles every year. So, you have that much more, and chips really drive everything from cars to, the watch, which smart watches to everything. So that roughly doubles the compute capacity of the world every 2 years. So that's sort of, and it's geometric progression, right? So you may start from 2, but then you hit like 1 million really soon. So we are living in that kind of a world where, the compute capacity, the sheer pace of innovation, as some of the speakers, spoke about before. And what, we've observed, and what I personally observed is generally, from a personal perspective, from a customer perspective, so to say, they are quicker to adopt, to do this technology change, more so than businesses. So as businesses, we maybe lag behind, and while there's obviously a lot of innovation, so it's the customers which adopt faster than us, and it's almost a catch-up game, right? So be it in terms of the AI stuff that we know, Chat GPT, etc., etc. So adoption is first, usually at a personal level, and then businesses catch up, right? We try to chase the customer. It could be TikTok earlier, now it's Instagram, and now the latest data suggests that the attention span of the customer is reducing, right? Now to put up a full-fledged story or a post on Facebook no longer cuts it. You have to be on Reels, you have to be less than 10 seconds. And in that 10 seconds, the first 2 seconds is most important, because nowadays somebody doesn't even want to sort of tap the reel. You're seeing, and all of us do that in our personal life. So attention span is what chases the customer. So in this sort of a context, I think 3 things for me to drive a successful digital transformation thing. For customers, it's personalization, right? Because unless you sort of nail that, and of course, MarTech is at the heart of that. So unless you really know the customer well through data points, as some of the speakers before suggested, and also know where and what content to sort of chase the customer with. So that really will then lead to customer centricity, and then further on from there, the quality of communication. So we are no longer in the world that we can give a dump. I mean, and common SMS to millions of customers, that no longer cuts it, right? So you need to be contextual. You need to be in the format and in the platform that the customer really wants you to be. So that's to me, that sort of drives customer centricity, and of course Hero FinCorp is also trying to do that through gathering data, etc. For others like employees, it's more about empowering them, because it's again, I feel, a journey that a lot of us have started in a pre-digital era, or maybe a digital era, but where it wasn't the cornerstone that it's become now, right? Maybe it was traditionally IT and digital were always support. I mean, looked at as a sort of a support function, right? But now it's sort of the main business driver of most companies. So really, how do they use technology? How do they use things like AI, etc., to empower themselves? So it's not that it's replacing them, but each wave of technology as it's come, it's really acted as an aid. There were naysayers, like, I mean, for example, it could be, and now it's AI, but even before that, like even when, let's say, email came in, I mean, people said, you're right, you're replacing, and there are many more examples of that. So it's really how do I use that and empower my employee community? And then finally, as far as stakeholders are concerned, how do I provide transparency using digital? I mean, be it our DSA partners, because we have a lot of channel partners, and I'm sure the Spinny would have similar. So how do you provide them transparency? How do you provide them sort of comfort that it's really happening? So I think across each of your personas, be it for us it's customers, it could be employees, or it could be our channel partners. How do you use digital in a way that sort of links back to how they anyway are using digital in their personal spaces, whether they're used to WhatsApp, so how do you innovate on that channel, right? And then how do you sort of have content which is relevant to them, and how do you provide transparency? The combination, and it's not just customer centricity, because it's customer centricity, employee centricity, and partner and stakeholder centricity all sort of moved into one. Knowing that, firstly, obviously, data is important. Once you know them, how do you sort of leverage each of the channels that I spoke about? So I think that's sort of the start of the journey that we are in as well. And I'm sure a lot of the people in this room also would be in that journey.
I think great, Rajiv. That sets the wider context. Pankaj, will be good to hear from you.
Yeah, I think thanks for setting the context, and thanks everyone for being here. Now, I'll talk about customer centricity and how do we feel as a brand. See, digital transformation, digital technologies, on one hand, they enable and empower customers to reach out to brands more quickly. They also enable brands to service the customers a lot more quickly. Now, we are a digital native brand. We are in a traditional industry, but we approach everything through technology, which actually puts us, and this is what I realized moving into Spinny from various digital-only brands, it also sometimes, kind of disable you. It poses certain challenges. I'll give you an example. Spinny's growth seed is, the fundamental strength is identifying good cars from bad ones. That's our fundamental strength. And that's how we started. We started evaluating cars and listing cars as our own on various classifieds platform. And then we built websites and apps and got a lot of direct traffic to build a customer pipeline of our own. Now, whenever we think of adding anything to the system, for example, a post-sales servicing or a car servicing that customers can come back to us with, we have to build it over and above whatever we have built so far. Now, that poses challenges because traditionally, if you want to service a car, you can go to any of the garages, typically used cars. You will go to any of the garages, get your car serviced, get some things changed. You might run into somebody who you are trusted with. But when we want to, start that and we need everything on the system. Because at the same time, we are extending warranties, we are servicing those warranties, we are giving buyback promises. So how do you grow with that system that you have built so far is suddenly a problem. At the same time, I think definitely with a lot of customer centricity that we have inbuilt in our own DNA, we want everything to be precise. We want people to experience flawlessly servicing experience or warranty experience. So sometimes that also slows down. That's what I've realized. We approach everything from a digital lens, and sometimes we fumble in rolling out something that could have been rolled out a little quickly. That's a perspective that I wanted to add.
I think it's great to hear, from both of you that you expanded on that customer centricity, and beyond that, right? For employees and partners, how do you do that? Employees, again, are a customer at the end of the day. And with the customer centricity, obviously, for a brand like Spinny, what the challenges are. I think building up on that, right, my second question would be around that as a leader, right, what's your style or what's your leadership philosophy, to be able to foster a culture within your teams or organization, where they develop a risk-taking ability, right? Though calculated, develop a risk-taking ability. And also, cite an example when you have done it and you have seen some great changes happening within the organization.
So I think that's thanks for the question. That's a very good sort of question. And so I think for us, given that we are kind of starting off in our digital transformation journey, I mean we have no choice but to innovate and fail fast, right? So it's not that we weren't a digital native company, but we are sort of expanding and getting there. So I think personally, and of course, it flows right down from Mr. Munjal and our leadership team. That we have the culture of trying and failing fast. So I'll give you one example. So traditionally, we were a very channel partner driven organization, right? So a lot of the sales happened through channel partners. So digital marketing is sort of something, a new way of sourcing for us, while it may be very native for the likes of Spinny. So setting that up entirely, understanding that both for new customers as far as well as cross sell to sort of get that mix right, and I briefly alluded to it in my previous discussion. Sort of so getting the channel right. So for example, for some of our customers may be using smart feature phones, right? So you may not digital native may not be there. However, for example, I'll just voice is something which we experimented with. Recently we launched an AI bot, right? A voice bot. So which kind of catered, and we were surprised by the adoption that's bringing. So really understanding your customer, reaching out through means which really work for that customer, personalizing, and having the right set of tools to personalize. So essentially allowing your team, to come back to your question, to really experiment and fail fast. So at any point of time, we on the digital marketing front, we run hundreds of experiments, which could be, one experiment could just be the creative, like, for example, the theme and the channel, right? So for example, it could be a travel theme, right? Which you're running, or a particular headline that you're running, right? Which creates, because finally those are your, assets. So it's a combination of messaging, the combination of channel, combination of understanding your customer, and really to have the ability to try and fail fast, right? So, and if something doesn't work, really try the next thing. So it's a combination of trying and failing fast. It's a combination of sort of reaching out through, maybe certain things may not be intuitive when you start the campaign, but you experiment and fail fast. And I gave you the example of the voice bot, which we didn't think. And incidentally, being a heavy analog focused channel, we earlier, for example, service queries, right? Almost 90% of the service queries were people who just walked into our dealerships or call the call center. So we introduced obviously IVR as one of the ways of interacting with the customers. And recently we leveraged ChatGPT to launch a GPT-based bot. And so to a surprise, even a traditional customer is open to a WhatsApp-based interaction or a GenAI-based interaction. And today, almost 70%, at least on the servicing side, queries are happening digitally without reaching leaderships, without reaching, So a lot of that is just through experimentation. So really fail fast, experiment a lot, and then, sort of build on things that work. That's the culture which I personally would, like to foster.
Pankaj, over to you.
I believe people are fundamentally creative, and given enough latitude, there would always be innovation that will start happening within the team. Now, I think it requires a certain set of seeds and environment. And just to give you an example, it's important to have certain amount of psychological safety in doing mistakes. Uh, Now, I would instill that within the team that, first of all, understand what your peer is doing. So I encourage people talking to each other, understanding each other's goals. Uh, there are a lot of people who would be questioning cross-functional failures or certain actions that the cross-functional teams would take. I think it's important to instill that trust that there is a common goal that we are all running behind. So first of all, that's the groundwork that is needed. And once people feel safe, uh, they feel confident in sharing feedback and receiving feedback. I think there are a lot of innovative ideas that start popping up. Now, as a manager, it is important to ensure that some of those mistakes or some of those innovations could turn into mistakes. That's important to instill that it's all right. So test, scale whatever succeeds, kill whatever is not successful, but be comfortable with testing. I think trust is important, cross-functional trust, a little bit of safety in sharing and receiving feedback. And then when innovation starts, idea starts popping up, testing those ideas, not really getting afraid of doing mistakes is important as a culture.
I think it's great to learn actually, from both of you. First is obviously for me to learn that for both the organizations today, the risk-taking capability is not something which has been squashed, right? It's something which has been promoted. Something that I really love what you said, Pankaj, is psychological safety, that you create that net for the people where people are ready to experiment, people are ready to try new things, right? Now this also gives me the segue, to ask my next question, right? While we work within our teams, right, you as a leader needs to obviously operate within an ecosystem where are many different teams as well, right? How do you foster that culture, within your teams and the organization, where people come together, collaborate, and, please cite an example, where you have seen that you have run some programs like this, and this has really helped, the teams grow.
I think, again, a very good question. So, uh, when you're part of, I mean, obviously no one is isolated in an organization. So, and some collaborations are obvious, right? Some collaborations are very obvious. Like, of course, a digital IT and maybe product team work together. So those are, I would say, pretty organic, and it happens just the nature of the work that you do. Or a marketing team will work with a product team closely because that's sort of the nature of the work. But when let's say if you clearly define, and I think Dipali was referring to it, your organization goal, your North Star, so to say. I mean, and maybe that's also, I think, a bit evolving. But let's say you have a common goal. Let's say let's take the example of maybe the common goal could be having a certain percentage of penetration of digital acquisition, right? Or let's say take the example of deeper product penetration for your customers, right? So sometimes you find that there are firstly, the defined roles are something which you need to relook at, because the best idea could come from somebody in the legal team, and it has actually, in some cases, right? Because there are because for example, we work in a regulated industry, right? So you cannot go overboard with certain campaigns or certain ways, and then there are certain innovations which could come from even a unlikely stakeholder like legal and compliance. So the important thing is to define your tribe, right? Define your objective, define your sort of groups, sort of common goal. And in our case, let's say we say that I mean, there are multiple projects, but I'm just taking the example of sort of digital acquisition as one cohort, right? So to understand, so we have sort of this joint up group with I'll just take the legal and compliance example forward. So maybe that started off a compulsion, because every creative, for example, needs to be approved by legal and compliance just by the nature of the regulated industry we are being in. But if you sort of work together with stakeholders, some of the brightest and most innovative ideas can come, as I said, from the most unlikely sources. So really go together, sorry, really go together with your tribe, define, sort of the common objectives of the group, and, break down the traditional silos, right? Break down the traditional silos, work with, the entire sort of cohort. And everybody, like for example, in our organization, we have this concept of a sort of an agile squad, right? So we work sort of in groups of 8 or 9, which span across multiple functions, and in fact goal sheets are also common, right? So, but even if you don't define it that way, essentially, to ensure that there are common goals, to give a platform to sort of so-called support functions, and that could be customer service, that could be, because some of the best ideas come from people who are closer to the customer. So for example, going to the field, listening to the sales team, right? Getting that feedback loop in place, right? And sort of have what I would call a sort of a 360-degree listening post, right? And that listening post could be sales, could be servicing, could be, so, and obviously most obviously the customer, right? So I think create that 360-degree listening culture in the organization, and it could be an employee who's not in the digital marketing team, etc. So once you have your listening posts, right, in place, and have a continuous feedback loop, right, that really helps innovating in your products, continuous improvement, right? Because as I said, but it's important to be open to that feedback, to have those 7, 8 permanent listening posts. It shouldn't be just a HR exercise, or so to have that feedback loop across your employees, across your stakeholders, across our channel partners, right? To have that reverse feedback there in place, and then to act on some of those ideas and influence. So that's personally, I believe that it's important to have that sort of a 360-degree listening on all the time.
Great, Rajiv. Pankaj, if you would like to elaborate.
Uh, I think collaboration, and especially cross-functional collaboration, is difficult. I'll put it straight away. Irrespective of all the theories, all the practices, all the listening, it's a very difficult problem to solve, especially in a very fast-paced organization. I think the seed of the solution lies in shared goals, which means that a goal that both the teams strongly believe in, and they also believe that we are tracking it rightly. For example, when marketing teams in Spinny works with the business team who is selling cars, we agree on a goals of count of test drives in a month. Now, marketing team doesn't really control test drives; it controls the upper funnel. But we kind of align and see those goals together, if they are moving in the right directions or not, and if they are not, then what's going wrong. With all trials and all efforts, no shared goals have been arrived at with the product team. I'm just sharing some real examples that I've experienced. So it is difficult. Even with shared goals, why certain things are not getting met, the beliefs, they often clash. Now, I think it is important to make peace with those clashes. It's important to ensure that the team that you lead is enabled to express how they feel about those clashes. At the same time, they are also listening into how a cross-functional team is expressing themselves. I think there is no easy way through those clashes. They have to happen. But having those shared goals always in front of you is important. And it's more of a hope that you would reach some type of a cohesion and teams working together. I think it takes time.
I think great. Cross-functional collaboration definitely founds the fundamental of a successful teams today, right? How they operate. And I think great to hear from Rajiv that create a surround sound. Hear everybody. Take feedback from everybody, and then work together. And I think on shared goals, definitely something that I'll walk out with, right? I think to summarize our conversation so far, right? We discussed about customer centricity, right? We discussed about that how do you foster risk-taking abilities, within the teams. We also discussed about collaboration, cross-functional collaboration, right? The last question, for the day today, and something which is very close to my heart as well, is how do you develop a culture, right, where you hear the unheard voices, right? You have new people in your team. You have some people, those who don't, probably don't talk a lot, right? But they have a lot to offer. What's your style? Like, what would you do? Have you come across this? What's your experience? Will be great if you can share some thoughts around it.
So I think I briefly covered it, but just to expand on that, as I said, sometimes the best ideas come from people who you don't expect, or the quietest people in the room. So often and it's probably natural that we get drawn to personas. I mean, somebody who speaks well, presents well, you think, and maybe that's maybe you cast somebody in. The classic saying, don't judge a book by its cover. But having said which, so let me cover two ways. I mean, one person who's in your team and then somebody maybe from the larger ecosystem. It could be some in a different team in the organization, or it could be maybe somebody from a vendor, channel partner. I mean, from the, let's say, the broader circle. So in the nearest circle, which is your team, so obviously there the amount of interaction that you may have with the immediate team member or the person who's the new joiner would be more. So I think the best way to do it is to experiment and put the person into different roles, right? I mean, I think the days are gone that you start at as a marketing specialist, and then you sort of graduate after 30 years. So really, and even the so-called Gen Z or maybe even now Gen Alpha, you have to throw open challenges, and the nature of work itself. I mean, that's a separate topic for another discussion, but itself is changing, right? I mean, it's not just that one thing, right? So so you have to give opportunities and different roles to people who new joiners and maybe this thing. So for example, in my team itself, there are people who come from different backgrounds. Like they started off in operations, but then moved to servicing and then doing a marketing role, right? And all in the course of, let's say, 2 years of joining as an MT. So the thing is to sort of experiment, give them sort of figure out inclination, and you can do this easier if the circle is your nearest team. So I call it sort of theory of circles. So the first circle is your own team, right? And it's the same thing in your let's say your personal life, your closest family and friends, because you know exactly, you interact the most with them. So to spot it, and then it's so much easier. But you have to give the chance, right? If somebody says that you know what, I'm really interested in running marketing campaigns, or I'm really interested in technology, or I'll work on the app. And reward the people who kind of put their hands up, or you see an inclination. So that's I would say relatively easier, because that's the closest circle. But as you expand the circle into let's say your collaborative functions, or people who you don't. Again, I think sometimes it's intuitive, because it comes, let's say in a meeting, somebody comes up with a great idea, or you spot somebody who has talent. So I think keeping an open mind is important. So if somebody, as I said, from a very unlikely source has a good idea, give it a chance, because it's easy to say that, this is something which is a core function of my department. It's the marketing department, the digital department's thing. Why is somebody from, let's say, a product team or let's say analytics team coming up with this idea, and why? So I think it's important to, as a leader, to acknowledge that ideas can come from outside, to give them a chance and do it. And same thing, I've seen that some great ideas come from, even from the outer circle, which could be a vendor or a channel partner, or, I'm not taking customers here, but let's say people associated, it could be, let's say, from a marketing agency, right? But who works closely with you and has an idea, or it could be, even somebody who's just a channel partner. But, they've actually met the customer. So sometimes those, the insights which come are very, very, so like just yesterday, I was speaking to somebody who's from our collections team, right? And he came up with an insight which was very interesting, that he met a certain customer who was residing in the old city of Ahmedabad. And so he told me that, to reach out to this kind of customer, it's more difficult. I mean, and so it comes from those conversations as well. So really, as I said, to keep an open mind, to know that the idea, and I talked about the 360 listening post, and to, as a leader, be curious, right? Don't depend on those standing committees and, sort of the scheduled meetings, but go out, chat, and the junior most people who are the most in touch, the so-called new joiners and MTs, they are sometimes the most in touch with what's happening. It's easy again to be clouded by an organization, especially in a large organization, to be clouded by what the way the organization thinks, because each organization thinks the same way. I worked in big organizations like Citi and HSBC, and it was so easy to sort of spend your whole life thinking the HSBC way or thinking the Citi way. But when somebody from a sort of a small fintech comes in, and oh, I mean that's something which really is interesting. So really to have that and all the three circles which I mentioned to sort of be in touch with those concentric circles. That's the way to kind of innovate and give people a chance.
Thanks, Rajiv. Pankaj.
Is it about allowing people to speak up, or is it about allowing newer ideas from people who are not speaking up?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you can talk, like, we're talking about giving voices to the people, those who go unheard, right, at times within the organization and within the teams. So how do you foster, say, a culture where you sort of allow people to come up and talk about, what they think, some new ideas?
Sometimes this is what I do myself, is whenever I realize somebody who should have spoken up in the meeting hasn't spoken, or generally if somebody hasn't spoken, either that person is switched off or that person is not really feeling confident of speaking up. So I give them a chance that, let's, do you have a point of view? Do you want to share your thoughts? I think the way you articulate that particular question also encourages the person to speak up. That's important. You cannot do it always because meetings are short, and some of the other folks, they might not really appreciate that you're giving away that opportunity. So now, if that is the case, and I'm able to judge that there are certain people, they might have certain ideas, I would do a one-on-one. And it could be within the team, it could be a cross-functional team. So I usually approach anybody across the function as somebody who I can talk to directly, and I don't really take rejection badly, so that's fine. So I would go ahead and set up a one-on-one. I would follow up, and then maybe have a discussion and understand and hear out. So I think that's an important piece. It's important to be heard. It's important to know what somebody's thinking.
Fantastic. Rajiv, Pankaj, it was a pleasure. Thanks to all the audience for being with us. It made for an interesting discussion. I'm sure that everybody would have a lot to think about the role of leadership in growth, innovation, and driving a great culture. Thank you. I think we'll open up the stage for our next host to come in and spend the night with him.